everybody. Welcome to Pale in Comparison, a proud member of the Doof Network. In this podcast, my sister uses her knowledge of the Otherverse to take a look at Pact, Wildbow's least appreciated work, and I try to not give away any spoilers. I'm Jenny, and Malia convinced me to read more.
I'm Malia, and Jenny convinced me to read everything else. This episode, we are covering Histories, Arc 3. Before we get into that, however, I'd like to issue a spoiler warning. This podcast is filled with pale spoilers. If you don't know Toadswallow's plan for Kennet and don't want us to tell you, stop now, read Pale, and come back to this podcast. As for Pact, there will be full spoilers through the chapter we are covering.
All right. Also, we want to remind you guys, we've got a fan art contest going on.
Woo woo woo!
Yay! Called Pale Complexions. That's right. We're really good at naming stuff. Just want to make sure you remember that. And anything Otherverse related. That's siblings. Okay. So nothing about like any of the heartless, or heartbroken. I was gonna be like heartless kids, but yeah, that's the same thing. That's awkward speaking. I'm having problems with my brain. But anyway, none of those guys. We are sticking strictly to Otherverse for this contest. So
Yes.
please draw stuff. It'd be super cool. And you can win stuff, aka money.
And if instead of doing art, you like to judge people and their art, you should become our patrons. If you go to patreon.com/doofmedia, you can sign up. And our patrons are the people who will be picking the winners of this contest. Submissions are due July 30th, so go nuts and make beautiful things. And
I mean, they can be ugly too, I guess. Kind of whatever your aesthetic is.
It is the Otherverse. Yeah.
It is. You do you, essentially.
Yeah. And give us money so we allow you to vote to give other people money.
Woohoo!
Woo woo woo!
All right. Well, our chapter summary, just really vaguely, is that we're going to go into Sandra Duchamp's past.
Woo!
Woo! So, what did you expect for? 'Cause I'm trying to remember. Did you know it was going to be an interlude? I think you may have, but
I think I knew it was going to be an interlude because we were trying to plan the episodes ahead, and you were kind of like, "Oh, I'm not sure whether to assign you both," and I was like, "Oh well, is it whatever 2 chapters or whatever?" And it was like, "Oh, it's a chapter and an interlude."
That's right.
And because I knew that the last chapter was the last Blake chapter or whatever for the arc. So I did not expect Sandra Duchamp, I don't think. I was really excited. I feel like we haven't heard or seen a lot of her. I mean, like, we've heard of her as kind of a badass, like, oh, Sandra Duchamp and the connections, and, like, she's kind of an intimidating-ish person, but we haven't really seen her do much. She hasn't interacted with Blake at all, and so I was a little surprised. It wasn't Laird, it wasn't Andy, it was Sandra or whatever, and that was kind of cool. Okay. I really like her. She has big girl boss energy, and I think in a different story, like, I would really be cheering for her, and in some ways I am. And I think very much like the person who, like, consorts with demons, versus this, like, badass woman who's trying to make the best of things. She's really cool, and it's just interesting remembering constantly that I'm cheering for the demon boy.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I feel like, at least if you look at it in a certain way, in most of Wildbow's stories, like if you look at Worm and Ward and stuff, there'll be an interlude where you see like an antagonist or a villain or something, and you get their perspective and either feel sympathetic or actually start to like them because you're like, oh, this person's a human. But it's like, instead of an interlude, we're almost getting a whole story based on that, just because, I mean, not that Blake is it's not about him, it's about the demon shit, really, kinda.
Right, right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, she hasn't interacted with him. She doesn't know this kid at all.
Mhm.
But it's also just like she's definitely an antagonist, you know, but I don't think of her as a bad person um anymore, I guess. Like Laird's still a dick, but I really like her and I really want to know more about her family. I think that's the most frustrating thing with these interludes is I feel like I leave with a whole bunch of questions and I'm
Mhm.
like I really hope we get explanations eventually.
Yeah. No, they're pretty interesting, aren't they?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like this one a lot. Yeah, I remember it taking me off guard too. It was like, "Oh, I didn't expect to be going here." Um, but basically, this is kind of a long section for this part I put on here, but um, essentially, Sandra is being auctioned off. Well, for lack of better word, to a husband that her family wants to take a risk on. She ends up holding her own in the conversation and wins him over.
Yeah. Like I said, I really liked her. Um and really like her. We start off with like intense physical manipulation from her aunt, like
Mm-hmm.
putting her in the exact position, and it's almost like torturous. Like it's like you must hold your chin at this exact angle. And there's a moment later on when she moves and her aunt goes to put her back in that position, and she herself like finds the exact position again. And I was like, "Oh yeah, Sandra, like go you, like you're good at this." But it was also just like, like like she's good at this. She survives. She excels in some ways, but I hate that she had to find that position again and I hate that she had to learn it so quickly and it made me a little bit sad.
Yeah,
Um yeah.
no, that sucks. I guess that's kind of I know about having to be all like super perfect. I guess that's part of the Fae thing. They're good at
Mhm.
getting into that exact like everything.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. The Fae are very like detailed and particular and meticulous, and so it makes sense that they would have to be too. And it really builds up the contrast with Jeremy when he shows up and it's like this isn't like he looks like he's not trying hard, it's just literally he's not trying at all. Like
Mhm.
I thought that was kind of interesting how she emphasized like that this he actually wasn't trying. And it was a
Yeah,
little heartbreaking seeing like the levels she was going to or being forced to go to compared to his complete apathy for the situation
yeah.
and like hostility toward the situation.
Hmm.
um I wanted I wanted to talk about the whole adjusting her boobs thing. um
Yeah. What the fuck, man?
well so I went prom dress shopping in high school, right? Because I went to prom and I bought a prom dress, and I we went to this very packed, very busy store that had dresses just like fucking everywhere. Like I don't even know how they did it. I also don't understand how I found this dress. It's a perfect, beautiful dress and I love it, but I don't really understand how I managed to find it in like the heaps and heaps of dresses in this store. But like I'm trying it on, whatever. And I'm like 5'7", so I'm not like, super tall, but I'm not short. And especially compared to like a lot of people in
Me?
Hawaii, particularly Asian women and Jenny,
No.
I am tall. And this tiny Asian woman, I believe like Chinese woman, but I'm not sure, who owns this store and is like, running around helping people find their dresses and stuff. Just very no nonsense, matter of fact, like comes up to me and is like helping me with my dress or whatever, and basically just like puts her hand down my like the front of the dress and like moves my boobs into the right position, like so quickly and so just like no asking permission, no whatever. And it was just like before I could even be like, what the fuck? It was like over, and I was like, well, that wasn't sexual at all. Like, and it fits and it's nice and you made it work. And like, what the fuck just
Like
happened?
this in retrospect that was weird, but at the time it was kind of like
Well, it was like it was immediately weird, but it was also like, okay, well, that obviously wasn't like sexual or like anything. Like it was like just very. Like,
matter of fact.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, like, I'm okay with this, I guess.
You didn't really have a choice. It was like, okay, I guess
It's like,
this is fine.
well, this dress fits. And so it was pretty funny, like, reading the, um, I have, like, very large boobs, and so I kind of am used to, like, them being an issue, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So it wasn't entirely surprising that she felt the need to do this. But like reading this description, I was immediately reminded of that. But then it was like, oh God, what did she say? It was like, yeah, fluffing the boobs to like get them into a good shape. It was like, my woman was not fluffing. Like my woman did not fluff my boobs. It was just like yank, yank,
Yank, yank.
tie up the corset, done. Move on to the next girl. And I just was like I feel like fluffing boobs, like,
that'd be. I don't know if it would
wouldn't
do
help.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I really liked the description and boobs or pillows or whatever, but I was just kind of like, nah, you gotta yank them.
Yeah. If they're pillows, they're like they're a bit dense. You know, they're like.
It's like if your pillow was like made of jelly or something. You can't fluff jelly, you know?
Yeah,
Or,
it just
or
kind of
like Jell-O. You
it
can't
just
fluff
kind of
Jell-O.
goes back into the same spot. You know, it
Yeah,
kind
you
of
gotta
like
shove it and cut it. And
don't cut your boobs.
Don't cut your
I mean,
boobs.
I guess if you go to a doctor, but
then
like,
that's fine.
don't just like start cutting on your boobs. I
I also
am,
just really wanted to say fluffing my boobs on this podcast. So
well, goal. You know, you met one of your bucket list items. I guess you know, kind of a weird one, but you know, no judge. That's fine. I am very lucky. I've never had my boobs fluffed or repositioned by someone else that I can, you know, I don't. Along with your height, I don't have quite the amount of, I don't know, boobs that you do. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would be a pain.
It's not okay. It doesn't like really happen quite as often as I've made it sound. I just was kind of like, oh, okay.
I mean, that's good. It doesn't happen that often, but I mean, it's still like.
I'm trying to remember if like I bought a dirndl, which is like a German, like like a Bavarian traditional dress thing, and I'm trying to remember if they were adjusting my boobs when I bought that. I don't think so. I don't remember. Do you remember if those people?
I mean, you are making
did-
it sound like that happens often. Like anytime you get something like, I don't know, that is not just like a normal T-shirt, you're like, did they adjust my boobs that time? I don't know. You know, it's just one of those things. I mean, I don't
Sometimes
know.
you're in a rush and you gotta sell, you know, $300 prom dresses, and you need this girl
To just
to
fit
get this
into
dress
it,
on.
and just like obviously she doesn't know how her boobs are supposed to go, so I gotta do it. There you go, and then there you go, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wonder if she does that to all the girls, or just. I mean,
It didn't feel like it was her first boob
rodeo.
fluff. Yeah.
That too. Yeah. Boob fluff. Bluff.
Yank blank.
Floob.
Ew.
No, that's terrible. Ugh.
That's too
Yeah,
much.
that's a gross one. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I don't like that. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I regretted it. And that's what she said. But anyway, we're gonna move on. I'm assuming.
Yes.
Fucking hell. Yeah, I'm glad that is not the norm for most people. So I'm sorry to you and all big boobed women
Thanks.
and men out there who've
Truth.
had to get readjusted by someone else, because that seems like that would suck.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Closest thing, like, I mean, I've had to have help when I was learning how to breastfeed. That was not quite the same. But those lactation nurses are pretty awesome, though. They know their stuff. In terms
Cool.
of like feeling, Yeah, I mean, when you're pregnant, people like just want to touch you,
That's
and
so
a lot of
weird.
times they don't ask you. To where it would actually be like a relief if someone would ask me before touching my stomach. Um, and for some, I feel like I've been getting touched less this time. Maybe I'm giving off more of a vibe, or maybe just my new work environment. People are like not as
Touchy.
invasive or something. I mean, they're still touchy, but they actually ask me. But like the first time, I don't remember if I said this on this podcast or not, but the first time I ever had someone like in terms of like a stranger or someone I didn't know that well, say acquaintance, like touch my stomach. It was two people at the same time, and they both did the same thing. They didn't just touch my stomach with their hands. They literally both, like, it's like they planned it. Like they both like bent down and put their heads, like their ears, on my stomach. It was the weirdest shit, and I did not know these people very well, and I did not. I was kind of in shock. I didn't know what to say, and they were just like, "Ah, baby!" And they both put their heads like right on my stomach, and then were kind of rubbing my stomach and stuff. And I was like, "What the fuck is happening?" And ever since then, I get really happy when people actually fucking ask if they want to touch my stomach. Um,
Do
I
you
don't
say
know.
yes? Like, do you feel obligated?
I mean, as long as they're not like a creep, I don't care. Most of the time, I just am happy they ask. If I mean, yeah, it generally doesn't really bother me. But
Hmm.
I mean, if you ask, so generally, like, it's not. I don't really feel obligated, but I'm just like, hey, you don't come across a pregnant woman every day. I mean, it's a stomach. Feels
Some
kind
people
of.
do.
That's true. Some people do, but your average person probably isn't. Like, kind of feels like a beach ball sometimes. At least right
Yeah.
now it does. So and I'm at the point where it's like if you're lucky and time it, you might get kicked in the hand. So woo.
Ew.
Um, yeah, but it's just weird. So yeah, people, the main two rules I can think of off the top of my head for a pregnant woman: if you want to touch their stomach, please ask them. And I mean, if they look uncomfortable, maybe just don't do it. The second thing is, unless the baby is coming out, do not assume they're pregnant. Don't just go up, do not go and ask someone, when are you due? Because, like, there's so many women, including myself, actually. Or, I mean, I think I technically was pregnant, but I didn't know I was pregnant. So, like, there's so many women who've been asked that, like, you're just going to make them feel terrible. In fact, like, one of my friends told me this is a while ago, she'd bought, like, this new dress and she felt really, really cute. And someone came up trying to be nice and was like, when are you due? And she wasn't pregnant at all. And it made it so she never wanted to wear that dress again. Like,
Aw.
that's just sad. Like, just just assume that there's nothing there. On the other hand, though, if they do tell you that they're pregnant and they look obviously pregnant, don't do
Believe
what my
them?
patient did like a month ago and be like, "Oh, I didn't even realize." Because then you're just like, "Oh, I just normally do I just look like a fat person?" you know? Like kind of have to go in between there. Like if you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm like in my third trimester," don't be like, "Oh man, like I I mean, unless they're obviously like really thin cuz some people just don't show, but if they do look pregnant and say that, just be like, "Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations," is like
Just say that.
that's usually a good one. Okay? That's generally a good one to go with. All right. I'm sorry. Back to what we're supposed to be talking
Speaking
about.
of what not to say when women are pregnant, we're gonna get to that eventually.
All right. Yeah, we'll get to
But
that eventually. Um, back
um, I'm I'm pretty curious about the Duchamp family. I mean, I'm curious about all the families in Jacob's Bell, but practitioner families are really interesting. They're very controlling and they're very into their patterns and everything.
mhm.
But this family in particular, it's like, okay, so we know at least some Duchamps have been in Jacob's Bell since Grandma Rose was a child. Um, I feel like we don't know necessarily where Sandra is from. We know she ends up in Jacob's Bell. We know she lived in Toronto for a bit. Um, it seems like there are family members, like we met some at that party thing from out of town, possibly Toronto. They also have familial connections to Japan. Um, I just feel like I'm trying to figure out who the head of this family is or how that works, and it seems like
Hmm.
it's not the Jacob's Bell branch. That Sandra is the head of that currently,
Hmm.
but I'm wondering like how she got there. I'm also wondering like her aunt, like what was she's her aunt seemed like she was the head of some branch, but I'm not entirely sure where. Because it also seemed like her aunt kind of answered to other people, like they were like, "Oh, the family wants you to marry this guy," even though
Yeah.
the aunt was kind of like, "Oh, like you don't have to. We can find you someone else." So her aunt seemed like, "No, you can marry someone else, but the family wants you to." Um, Maybe it's kind of like a council thingy where everyone kind of picks things together. It was just like I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
Um, it also seems like she doesn't have children. I'm wondering if she's still married to Jeremy or if they are divorced. And what exactly is up with that? I kind of have the feeling that like they're still married and they just haven't talked in 7 years, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Like I don't believe we've seen, um, yeah, Jeremy or Jerry or whatever, um, before now, right? So,
Mm-mm.
what did I guess you kind of went over this a little bit. He just like looked like he did not give a fuck about anything, was not trying whatsoever.
It yeah. So it seems like he like started worshiping Dionysus. I assume some sort of like he really liked to party and it just sort of like fell into it and then like his power, comes from Dionysus and so he just became very disconnected from humans.
Hmm.
Um and but like is I don't remember if this kind of practice has a name. Like I feel like it does and I can't fully remember, but he's like he's the disciple of a reasonably powerful god. Um and so that makes him like a good potential match for a you know Duchamp woman whose family wants to possibly like be connected to the Lord of Toronto or whatever. Because it seems like they think that he could possibly make a run for Lord of Toronto at some point, which is why they're like, okay, Sandra, we're gonna match you with this guy. Um, it's not just that Jeremy doesn't care; he's like actively hostile.
Yeah, he
Um,
is.
Yeah, like it's not just like he's like, like what? Like, like a girl? Like, he's just like, oh, like, fuck you, you're Barbies, you're boring, like, you know, your Latin pronunciation sucks. Like, does
He's
the
a straight
blonde
up
have
dick.
right, like does the blonde have brains? Like just like like super aggressive and I'm kind of like, bro, you did not need to come to this meeting. Like you did not need like why the fuck are you here? Like
Yeah.
I mean, I think their points about like the Duchamps are really good at at a certain skill set, and if you're at all interested in like power and connections and rising up in the ranks, like we're a really good ally to have, and it's not that big of a price,
Yeah.
especially if you're not like considering other marriages. You just like I think that this was advantageous for him obviously, and maybe he
Hmm.
was thinking about that, but I'm kind of like, literally, why show up to this meeting if you're going to be such a complete asshole?
Yeah. I feel like the
Um,
booze probably didn't help. Maybe he's, I mean, which I mean, I guess some, he's intoxicated in some kind of way all the time, but uh,
right.
it's
I
like,
Yeah, I mean, I really hope he's not an angry drunk. That's a very not great
It's a pretty shit
aspect of
quality.
this man. Yeah, who, like,
Yeah.
is drunk all the time. I like, by the end of this, I felt, like, like, seeing them in her next scene, like, 15 years later or whatever, I felt a lot more positively toward him, and then so coming back and rereading this chapter, I was like, "Oh, like, yeah, fuck you." Like,
Yeah.
um,
Straight up
I
D-bag, bruh.
yeah, yeah. Um, I thought the fact that Wildbow picks Dionysus in this instance was interesting. I feel like in Pact so far, not universally, but in general, we're picking or he's been picking more conventional and famous Western traditions. You know,
Mhm.
like Dionysus isn't exactly a obscure Greek god. And the Greek theology or the Greek pantheon, the Greek pantheon is like pretty well known. And then like demons and like Christian theology and all of that. Whereas in Pale, it's like some of them seem made up or really obscure or are like blends of different um things. And I just think it's kind of interesting that like he went from, you know, Dionysus to um I don't even know, like Ulysses god, I guess. Just like kind of or
Mm.
that the healing chill as fuck god or whatever. Like
Mhm.
I guess that might be an actual god in some mythology, but I don't it didn't strike me as obviously one. Um do you have an opinion about that sort of
In
thing?
terms of, um sorry, can you repeat your question one more time?
Just
Sorry.
in terms of like Wildbow Impact is using a lot of myths
Like,
that are
there's
well known in the Western stuff, and he doesn't really impale. Why do you think that is?
I mean, it could be as simple as that um those are the ones he knew more about,
Mhm,
when he was writing this, and since, Pale has come out, he's, been able to read up on some more stuff, but,
mhm,
um, I mean, if you look at demons, that ties in pretty well to Christian theology. So
mhm.
maybe it just is easier, like, or it just makes more sense within the story context, to have that. Um, I mean, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, read on. We'll see if there's like other stuff that pops up as well, or if you still have the same opinion
Yeah,
later
I
on.
guess it surprised me, like, I don't remember for certain if I was like, "Oh, like Dionysus or whatever," like, before they say it, but it was pretty obvious that, like, that's who this was, and I'm not
Hmm.
used to that feeling when reading a Wild Bow story, I guess, is kind of what I'm, like, getting at, is just,
Mm,
like, um, I like it, but it felt different.
I guess so.
It's not really a critique, it's just, like, kinda something that stuck out as, like, maybe this was an earlier, like, less experienced Wild Bow slash,
Maybe.
like a not as fully thought out
I mean, I feel like in
universe,
Worm he
maybe.
still put a lot of references to things like in terms of naming and stuff like that. So I don't even know if I'd say. I mean, that could be it, but could just be that he thought it fit the story better to wait until now to bring some of that in.
That's true.
Like, not everyone's read Percy Jackson,
I
Malia.
was gonna say, it's just like, oh, it's so obvious to me, but it's okay. Everyone should read Percy Jackson.
That
It's
is
real
pretty
good.
great. Don't watch the movie. I mean,
The second one gets better.
I feel like if the author of the story is like
Disavows it.
railing it in terms of saying how much it fucking sucks, which I believe you can look on his website.
Oh, he hates
And
it.
yeah, I feel like that's just a good indication that like it kind of sucks ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing, yeah.
There is supposedly a TV show in production with Disney Plus, I believe. I'm not sure where they are in the process, but he seems more involved and more excited about that. So
Yay! That's
that could be
good.
cool. Yeah.
Yay. One thing I hate is when they take like awesome stories um and change a lot of the aspects, including like the ages of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the giver, for one, like made them all like what, 16 or something like that. Yeah, they made them
Really?
all like old and like had some weird love triangle thing through the
Ew.
whole thing, which is like,
No.
at least from what I've heard. Granted, I didn't see it because I didn't want to have my heart shattered into a million pieces. With how they butchered it because I heard it was bad.
Oh.
Same with Ender's Game. I couldn't make myself watch it because
Oh, you heard it was bad? I didn't really hear anything,
I
but
heard they spoiled the ending in the trailer,
I do sort of remember that, yeah.
which I feel like that doesn't bode
It's
well.
pretty, yeah,
Um,
dumb.
yeah. So just childhood books like that. I'm just like, yeah. Anyway. um,
Um, yeah, I think it's interesting that her aunt is like, "Oh, you know, if you don't like her, we can totally change her appearance for you, no problem." And it's kind of like maybe that's not the problem. Like maybe like he does seem to be very dismissive of her looks and the like conventional beauty or whatever is that she has. Um
mhm.
but it just sucks cuz then Sandra's just like, "Oh my god, no." Like she doesn't want it. You know, she doesn't want to have to put on
Yeah.
glamour constantly to please her husband and she shouldn't have to. Um and yeah, that moment was just like like frightening.
Like fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty jacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I guess just being around Faye so much makes it for that family, I'm assuming, to be like, oh, we can turn to that as a solution.
Mhm.
Um, but speaking of like, I guess Faye or not Faye, were you surprised about Sandra's familiar?
I was so surprised. I love Hilda so much. I love her so much. I need more Hilda. Yeah, I just like was like, oh, she's a Duchamp, it's a Fae familiar. Like I just like didn't really think about it or the fact that it's a stoat, I think it was, or
Mm-hmm.
anything. I was just kind of like, oh, whatever. I was like, oh, it's not a bird, weird. Um, but then it's just like this fucking troll, and it was just like, this is so cool. Um, I really love what this says about Sandra. I think that she is really torn between wanting to like say fuck you to her family and leave and knowing that like she can't for a lot of practicality reasons. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't be good for her. I think there's a lot of advantages from staying in her family and I think that she is like very controlled by them. I think that they were like that they approved of her desire to have this familiar, that this still fit in the acceptable boxes or acceptable options, but it isn't what I expected. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I love that, Hilda is like really smart and really strong, and to manage to bind Hilda, you also have to be smart and strong, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
She went alone for months and like found her, and like she was educated, like she got her degree at such a young age, partially because she was like, I want to be able to find one of these. Like she didn't want a fairy.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how much her personality was influenced by Hilda in terms
Mm-hmm.
of being um more aggressive, more direct, less, "Ooh, I'm a fairy. Ooh, I'm gonna say all these things. Ooh."
How satisfying was it to, like, just be
Oh.
like, "Fuck you, dude." Like, "I'm gonna have my fucking, like, troll come out."
It was so good. She just fucking like jumps and it's just like troll, and she breaks the expensive bottle and everyone falls to the ground, and he's just
Yeah.
like,
It's
"Well, as
like,
long as she doesn't actually hurt me." And I'm like, "Lol." And I like also that, like, I didn't realize it the first time reading it, but like her implement is that chalice, that the cup,
mhm.
which in tarot and different things is like very feminine. Um, very, it's like both like the water element, but it's also like the cup is the vagina, right? But the cup is also like receiving. Um, it's a lot more passive. It's not, um,
Hmm.
like the wand, the sword. These are very active. These are very like go out and stab you and do the thing. Whereas the cup, like cups sit there and hold things, right? Like
Yeah.
women. um,
Hmm.
and so I
Sure.
think it's interesting that she has a cup, um, but then she also has a troll, and she manages to use her implement in very, I don't know if the word is aggressive ways, but that's what she does to like get Hilder to attack him and to like like break the bottle and stuff. She's using her implement, and then later with the fairy, she uses her implement for something I don't fully remember, but those weren't like
Super
passive.
passive.
Yeah. Um And I like that she's not just like, "Oh, I'm not like other girls, like, I hate this." But, like, she also has a fucking troll. And she, like, later, like, pets Hilder's, like, braid shit in an intimidating way. And I hope that they like each other because I love Hilder.
I feel like they do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like they do. Which one do you think she got first?
Oh, that's interesting. I kind of think she got the implement first, if I had to guess. That seems like something they want their daughters to do quickly and early.
Yeah.
Um, and it seems like having an implement would have made it easier to get to bind Hilder.
True.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Hilda's pretty sweet.
She's so cute. I also her aunt in this scene goes from being like completely insufferable to like much more sympathetic and empathetic. Like it's like you kind of like it's like she's being real with her niece and possibly her daughter for the first time. I think she was really impressed with Sandra, both from the she could hold her position in the exact right spot that her aunt wanted her to, and she managed to make this work. She didn't take shit from this guy who was insulting her family. Um, and she's finally real with her and is kind of like, hey, like, we're going to give you an actual choice in this matter. Um,
Yeah.
and seeing like I think that Sandra in the present is very, very similar to her aunt. I think that the Duchamp women buy into the importance of their dynasty. Um, I think that it must be some weird thing that's super important that allows them to have power for some reason. Um, and I think that at this point, she's willing to sell off her nieces, um, or whatever. Um, And I think that in this moment, you can see how her aunt could have been like more like Sandra or Missy and become the woman who's willing to do this. That she's not completely like without empathy, but she feels that this is like necessary,
Yeah. No, for
which
sure.
sucks.
It does. It totally sucks. I guess I get a lot of power from it. Um, all right, probably our next section, if you're cool with that. Um, so kind of fast forward to, I believe, 12 years later. Sandra has a meeting with a fairy ambassador about her husband's missing satyrs. If I said that right, satyrs.
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
She ends up getting them back, and finds out that she's expecting. Um, After returning to her husband, she finds something she was not expecting.
Um, so I actually think it's 15 years. Later in this
Really?
section, she says like it's been 15 years, but they still try to seduce me, and I still think about it. I think that the 12 she's been like doing fairy shit for 12 years.
Ah, okay.
Like
I
I don't know
stand
if like
corrected.
her family decided that she could go into the fairy courts. Like I'm not like she's there to get fairy to possibly become familiars for other Duchamp girls. Um she's also there to get her husband's satyrs back, but like the main reason she's there is for these familiars, and
Hmm.
don't I'm wondering like how and why she got that job. I mean, her aunt was impressed by her. Maybe she just was kind of like, all right, we're going to ask you to try to do this as well. Duty to the family, whatever. I'm curious as to whether Sandra enjoys this or wants this. Um, I feel like, she is good at this. She knows a lot of the things to watch out for. She knows um, what to listen for and what to think about when she's dealing with the fairy, but I'm not sure if she likes it or not. I feel like she doesn't necessarily reflect on like it's not like, "Oh, this is thrilling and I love the intrigue." And it's
Yeah.
not like, "Oh, I like this is torture." It feels like it's like a chore and a duty. And I'm wondering if she is the one who continues to do that now or if she's handed this sort of thing off to someone else cuz she's like sick of their shit.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like she loves it.
Mm-mm.
If she really loved it, she might have picked a fae as a familiar instead.
True. It I wonder how the Duchamps and like Patrick interact. Having a exiled fairy prince in a town with like some hardcore fairy related practitioners is really interesting, and I wonder how much they deal with each other.
That's a good question.
It was a thought.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, going back to my Hilder fan club, I love that the whole like you're not supposed to eat or drink anything when you're there was interesting, very like Fae like and stuff. And so she sort of like hands the cup over to Hilder, and Hilder just fucking chows it. Like she just like puts the whole goblet in her mouth and like crunches it up, and it's just like so good. Like Hilder isn't a goblin. Um, this troll is not like running around and jumping and screaming and like pooping and throwing things and stuff. Um, but this troll is not a fairy, right? Like this
Yeah.
troll I think fucks with the fairy in the way that goblins do, not because of her stealing the spotlight, but just like she's very direct, she's very violent, she's very like she cuts through their bullshit.
Hmm.
Um and I love that. um she's so good. She thinks about how like or Sandra thinks about how they must have done this so many times and has accounted for all the possible variables of the situation. And I'm just like, you didn't account for Hilder. Like, you didn't account for a fucking troll ripping up your giant table and cutting off your limbs with it.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
you learned something. Yeah, the fairy feel very like mafioso, like mob boss. Like, they don't ever say anything directly. They're very like manipulative. They have lots of like fingers and things. They can be very violent, but I feel like, the scenes with the fairy is very much like, oh, like there's four different things going on at once and you're never quite saying what's actually happening.
Hmm.
Um and it just I don't know. But yeah, a throwback sort of to earlier in this conversation. I totally didn't get that Sandra was pregnant at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that like there was someone else in the fairy verse, whatever this was, that was also trapped. And it was like, oh, like we just want to make sure everyone can get out because maybe there's like been someone else from her husband's whatever that was taken and she didn't know about it or whatever. I just like didn't um expect this at all. But
Yeah.
it seems like she was kind of excited and like she was like, "Oh, I'm really afraid of giving birth." Her husband's like, "Oh, I can let you get drunk the whole time." Like that was really sweet. Um and I don't know, their relationship it's kind of like she's the only human he has any connection to, talking about how men with their wives and girlfriends can actually like be open and talk about their emotions and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
like, they don't have a perfect relationship, but they're the only like person, the only human that either of them have like a connection with.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of like the second time going through it really like breaks my heart that he knows about their whole we can only have daughters thing, and he knows that she's conceived a boy and he doesn't tell her. I think that's kind of shitty.
Well, I mean, maybe he didn't realize it until the nymph said it in particular.
I'm pretty sure he knew. Um because he's very much like, yeah, this is my God's will and this is going to happen every time, and yeah. I thought the "My God and his brethren are fond of their tragedies" line was pretty funny because Greek tragedies are such a like thing in classical literature or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just like one boy and the line is broken, the working unravels. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, you can still awaken all your fucking kids. Like, what is it? I mean, the lot like it's like oh, it sounds like there's some sort of connection-y magic, like the line something unraveling, like it feels like the threads and connection-y magic, but like
Mm-hmm.
what does it do that just fucking awakening your kids wouldn't do? Does something.
Does something.
And it might be important and I might find out.
All right. So, last part. She calls someone mysterious and asks for a favor.
Yeah, I feel like you putting this and like your question earlier makes it seem like either this isn't Jerry or you want me to think that it's not Jerry, but it's fucking Jerry, right?
I'm kind of curious why you didn't think it was the baby.
What? What?
She's having a boy, right?
No, she aborted it. They'll never let me keep it. The whole line will unravel. Is
I
this her
mean,
fucking child? This can't be her child. You can't have done this to me.
I'm just saying. I'm just asking. Regardless of whether it is or not, that's what I thought the first time I read it. So I'm kind of curious.
Oh
Like,
no. Um,
we
I
can
mean,
explore both.
we can explore both, but like,
I remember the
they'll.
first time I read it. That's what I thought.
That's so interesting. Um, no, but just that they'll never let me keep it. If we have like one boy and the line is broken, it doesn't seem like the Duchamps have been like fucked or something. Like, I don't think that she would be in charge of anything if she had had a boy, and especially if she knew about it. Um, it also they talk about the connection between them, like the distance between them grew wider, and in that conversation they were saying like, we have this thing and it's not perfect, it's fragile, but it's good or it can work or whatever. Like she seems kind of happy and contented ish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the in this conversation with this person, they
Mm-hmm.
say something along the lines of like, "Oh, it was fragile" or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just like pretty positive that like this is Jerry, her estranged husband who hasn't talked to her in 7 years, and we're going to Toronto to fight the Buckeye and um other shit
Mm-hmm.
like drunken wine demons. except not demons.
Drunken white demons.
Because I guess, like, if it's her son, then it seems like something bad should have happened to the Duchamp's magic.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like people would know about that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like this person would have to be a super secret, and you wouldn't want to call them and talk to them because connections. But maybe that's why it's been 7 years. But also, I don't know. I don't see this woman as being like, I'm not talking to my son for 7 years. I don't know.
I think, well, just again, I'm not telling you which one it is. I'm just saying, I think when I read it, I was interpreting in terms of like the line is broken to be more like in terms of, I don't know, like if it was still her kid, if she got rid of her kid, then like put up for adoption or even sent away to be killed or whatever it was, then it'd be different. But that's,
I think I just assumed, like, I mean, the practice would know, the spirits would know the moment that the child is born. And I think, like, that's it, done. Bam.
Okay. Yeah. But so what do you think, because it's like it's been 7 years. So I guess like who do you think this is, and what do you think she needed to contact him about 7 years ago?
I think this is Jerry or Jeremy. I'm not his friend.
The person she's talking to on the phone?
I mean, yes.
So I'm just like, is this like a present day conversation, or is this like
Yeah.
back in? Okay. So who are they talking about?
They're talking about Blake.
Okay.
Blake's going back to Toronto and they're going to kill him. Which means there's probably not a time skip.
I mean, there could be a time skip.
There might be a short time skip. But, like...
No, I mean...
Yeah. He's from Toronto. Blake's going back to Toronto. I wasn't sure if your cell phone would still be in service because he...
Are you trying to accuse me of, like, trying to really misdirect you?
Yes! It's Jerry! It's Jeremy. I'm wondering what she called him about 7 years ago. But yeah, no asking for forgiveness. We do what we must. Because they don't ask for forgiveness. And it was a fragile connection and it broke. The irony of their reality. I wonder if it's because she's a connection wizard and they couldn't make a good connection. And apparently Diabolist just cast off this fucking beacon, even though he's not really a Diabolist. He was near a demon for 2.5 seconds. And like, are Diabolists that uncommon, and is it that obvious as to what Blake is? Like, maybe she's just bitched about the Thorburns a lot, and so Jerry, like, knows who this is.
Well, she hasn't talked to him in 7 years, it says, so I guess unless she'd been bitching to other people who were his buddies.
Well, not about Blake in particular, but about just, like, you know, the Thorburns for a while or something.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to Briar Girl, you know, she was saying that, like, even the animals don't like you, they can smell it on you and all that, so...
Right. Well, I'm just like, Toronto's kind of big. I guess this dude, if he's looking for him, will go out to find him. I don't know. It just, yeah. I don't know if this is a bold and specific prediction. I didn't realize this was open for interpretation, but we're gonna go to Toronto and we're gonna fight Dionysus's disciple.
I feel like I did pretty good at, like, trying to fuck with your brain.
Yes, you did.
I feel like you interpreted it just how it was meant, and I tried. But I can't quite fool you, so.
But did you think it was
No,
the
but honestly, the first time I read it, I still like was taking this. I think I took this conversation to be like a thing, kind of that was after, but like still close in the past. And I was thinking like some mysterious dude that like she sent her son off to as soon as he was born, so that no one would find out he existed, and somehow that would still keep her line intact and blah 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 blah. Um, and then I was like, oh. But yeah, the first time I read it, that's totally what I thought. So
Huh, I like it.
yeah, I mean, it kind of is obvious that that's not what it is, but that's totally what I thought in retrospect. And I'm gonna say maybe it's because I read, um, I don't remember which book it is, but the Enchanted Forest or whatever,
Chronicles? Uh-huh.
Enchanted Chronicles. Where that's that point where like they have the Rumpelstiltskin guy, but his name's not Rumpelstiltskin. It's like,
Oh, when he has the 18,000 children,
yeah,
and he's just like, "Please, someone, I can't do
I
this
can't,
anymore.
I
I
love them
can't
all, but
raise
I
all of
can't
these
raise all
children."
these kids. Yeah,
And so he has to get more and more women to like make golden thread because that's the only way he can
yeah,
afford to do it. And he
exactly.
can't weave the gold for himself or for the children. God, it's
Yes.
so fucking
And what
good.
his name was fucking easy. It was like Harold or something.
He
They're like
changed it to
they can't guess fucking Harold.
he like legally changed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
Oh
I made
god.
it literally the easiest name, and like, yeah. And I'm not gonna spoil it, guys. If you read
Uh,
these stories, they come up with a good solution for him.
I
But
need to reread these books.
I was basically assuming that Sandra called Harold up. Was like, can you just take this? Like,
Take
you'll
my
know him
child.
when you see him because he's a tiny little
That's
dude. And
hilarious.
I mean, I didn't actually
Oh,
think that, but I think I had read that like close to it, so it was in my brain.
I
So I was
need
like,
him to
oh, he's
not
got to
come
be going to some
back.
secret like dude that's gonna make him his apprentice or something. Yeah, and that's like totally not what happened. But
I love it.
anyway, yeah, it was kind of a big. Well, I tried. It's kind of funny. Um. Anyway, now everyone knows how badly I misinterpreted that the first time, but that's okay. It's because
It happens
it
to
happens to the best of us
it does.
and to the worst of us. Really, everyone.
And
So,
to the rest of us. Yeah.
all right, and we have finished the arc.
Oh, that
Yay!
was fast.
Yeah, that was a pretty short one, but so gonna go into the title of the arc. What does breach mean?
Yeah, so I looked it up again, slash for the first time, and Google said breach is the act of breaking or failing to observe a law, agreement, or code of conduct. And then it also talked about a hole in a wall that you've broken through or whatever. And it also talked about whales. So bing bang
Hole in a
boom.
wall. That's
Like
some.
when you
That would be a great
breach.
transition to my fun fact, but we're gonna wait.
Uh, uh, um but yeah, so it seems like, Blake made it into Laird's house. There was a breach into Laird's house. Uh Laird also had the police called on him and was arrested. So maybe he was arrested for breaching, you know, the peace. I can't think of any like explicit agreement or something broken in this section. Can you? Unless it's a spoiler. I don't think.
I'm gonna be honest. The only thing I can think of when we talk about breached is just a whale breaching. And so every time you're like, Blake breached into Laird's house, I just picture Blake like breaching out of the water somehow, like out of the sink or the bathtub into Laird's house. And then like,
I love it.
Jerry, I mean, breach Sandra's trust. I mean, that's adding the trust in there makes it so that because at first it was like Jerry breaching out of just like a fountain of wine. because that's kind of what he would do, just like breaching. Um, yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
it's. I mean, so it's hard for me to concentrate on anything else, which is really sad. 'Cause I'm
Yeah.
a
Yeah. But yeah,
yeah,
the last thing I put on there was that Jerry breached Sandra's trust or something, like tying the interlude in. But I don't know, I felt
yeah,
slightly betrayed by
yeah,
that personally.
yeah.
Um
Did you say like they breached uh something in the Fey realm?
did they breach that man's body?
They breached his arms off. It's a rough way to go.
Hilder made the table breach. Just ripped it.
I feel like we might be stretching a little bit, but that's all right. You know,
No, this was obviously exactly what Wildbow meant.
that's obviously what he meant. Yeah, he didn't mean any of that other crap about like, failing to observe a law or anything. It was literally just
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
like a weird way to say that someone's arms got ripped off in the past. Yeah.
I yeah, I really liked this chapter and this interlude a lot. I mean, I think like probably 60% of my love for this chapter is Hilder, but I really liked it.
I mean, Hilder was pretty amazing.
It was
So,
so good.
yeah.
Oh, also, I feel like the fairy meet them to leave the realm and then they don't actually leave because like the satyr go through and she leaves the satyr in the room, but I don't know where the fairy went. Um, it doesn't really matter, but it was interesting.
True. That's interesting. So, where do you see this going? What are your predictions for after this?
We're going to Toronto.
Woo!
It seems like we're not gonna that Blake is going to Toronto. We're gonna see him um fight the
Something.
the wine monsters.
The wine moths, the breaching satyrs.
The breaching satyrs. It was also it was
That
interesting
could be a
that like
sports team mascot. What do you think about that?
sports team
The breaching
mascot.
satyrs. I just feel like
No.
that would be pretty sweet. Like it could be the swim team. It could be a synchronized swimming team. The breaching satyrs. No, not
No.
buying it. I
No.
don't know. Leave your comments down below. I feel like that's about as good as it gets for a synchronized swimming team name.
It
You know
reminds me of Fantasia a little, I guess.
exactly. If you-
Um
yeah.
the the Blake Toronto, Blake Toronto, Blake Toronto. Oh,
That could just be
and
the summary in itself, right? Like
okay.
that's just your prediction.
The part 2 of this chapter happens like on 9/11 basically. Um
Hmm.
cuz a year and 9 months into the new millennium, people of this old god decided to do a thing and now the Lord of Conquest person, Lord Toronto, is all like hype and sending people off to war to go conquer things or whatever.
Hmm.
So that this story takes place in 2011, I think. So that means that that was 10 years ago. So that means that the last time Sandra contacted Jerry was 3 years after she left him, approximately. What the fuck happened in 2004? I don't know. Um,
Hmm.
I think the story takes place in 2011. Anyway, none of that really matters. It's just interesting
Okay,
to have like
Google
a
Toronto
specific.
2004. Let's see. The year in review. So a year after the city was held captive by a deadly outbreak and a massive blackout. What? There's a deadly outbreak.
And a massive blackout.
Apparently. Um
Okay, wait. It actually could have been not 2000. When did the story take place? Fuck. So it started being published in 2013. Maybe it was 2013. Maybe Worms 2011.
I mean,
Anyway, I'm sorry, everyone, for this like completely useless tangent. Um,
I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Completely useless tangents.
Yeah, but that was an interesting kind of like note, the historical note of 9/11, and kind of helping center that in the story and everything.
So I know when it was written, if that
Uh-huh.
helps, which maybe it won't. So
2013.
yeah.
Yeah.
It finished on March 7th, 2015.
Oh.
I know. Super sweet. Not helpful. All right. You're welcome.
But yeah, so where are we going? We're going to Toronto. It seems like we won't really have a time skip. We're definitely coming back to Jacob's Bell because we haven't even gone to the North End yet. And I'm still waiting on one of those rituals. I kind of feel like we'll be in Toronto for about an arc and we'll come back. I also feel like I'm not ready to leave Jacob's Bell. Like I feel like I'm not like grounded enough with most of these characters. And it's just like whoop. And now I'm gonna be introduced to more characters, and I'm just like, I'm not ready.
Well, get ready. Buckle up.
I saw our last episode, like last week's episode just came out today, where we learn about the time bubble and shit. And I think Megafire was like, like it finally happened, like the first big thing of Pact or whatever. And I'm like, this does feel like a big thing. This does feel like a big shift. But I was just like, oh fuck, like where are we going?
Yeah.
I really thought this story was gonna be like 16 arcs about a boy in a house, and it's not that. Unless this is all a dream.
The ultimate cliche goes back to it being all a dream. If it is all a dream.
Those fucking dreams in Pale really messed me up.
I know, right?
I was like shocked and horrified and like this can't be happening, but I thought it was happening.
Yeah, I did too. He's really good at writing nightmares.
It was so mean. Also, Lucy's fucking date. I just feel so bad. Like
I know. Fuck. Wildbo, how about you write some flying dreams as like
instead of
therapy?
dreams?
No, I mean because the flying dreams are amazing. Generally, he probably would be like, "All right, I'm gonna make it so that you're flying and you get sucked into an airplane engine or something." But you know,
we're all gonna have that dream tonight now, Jen. Thanks.
sorry, guys. Well, I mean, hopefully not, because
hopefully not.
I had another Wildbo dream.
Poor man. What happened?
Well, it's been a few days or so I can't remember that much. But basically, like again, I don't know what he looks like in real life, but he is like some random white dude in the dream, right? And so I dreamt. I don't remember that much, but basically, like we were house guests at his place, and you could tell he was trying to be really polite, but like we kept doing shit to piss him off, like unintentionally. Like kept like, oh, like we used like accidentally used like the special china or something and like kind of put a scratch on the plate. And he's like being really nice, but kind of gritting his teeth, like, it's fine. Take yourselves at home. And like kept trying to be like he was being really nice, but we could tell he's just really irritated. We just kept making like little like what is it like little mistakes. Shit that just kept pissing it off. And I was just because I think I had like Vitalis and Miko there. I don't remember if you were there or not, but there's like a little group of people I was with that were there, and no one noticed except for me that he was
Oh
getting really
no.
like just
Oh no.
increasingly irritated, and I was like, "You guys have to be good. What are you doing?" And like just kept fucking it. Like, oh, we accidentally opened like the fucking special occasion wine that he'd been saving, like shit like that, where it's like, it's that's all I remember. So, we're really shitty. Like me and my family or whatever were really shitty house guests at Wild Bo's house, basically, and he just was like too polite to just kick us out.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Let's see. I know this is kind of out of order to what we normally do, but um,
I wanted to change it because you seemed so upset last time.
I don't even remember being upset, but I
Or you
appreciate
seemed
it.
so perturbed last time.
Just like confused. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yay, guys. So we changed it on the sheet. We're gonna do like a pale in comparison section now. Woo! So,
Woo!
um, basically, we're gonna talk about Ulysses.
Woo!
Woo! I'm
Um,
guessing you want to compare this. I'm blanking on his. So Mr. Drunky Drunk.
Mr. Drunky, yep, that's the one.
Mr. The Breaching Satyrs and Drunky Drunk. Um,
No, I picture
uh,
just like Mark Wahlberg, real drunk, with a bunch of satyrs leaping out of fountains of wine, and just really like doing some rap.
Wahlberg? What? Why?
Marky Mark,
Oh.
but drunky drunk.
Oh, jeez. Fuck.
Yeah. So Jeremy or Jerry and Ulysses, right? Like I don't know / remember what type of practitioner this is called, so I'm just gonna kind of call them like disciples. I think it's really interesting as a concept and really neat. Um,
Like priests and stuff, or is that what it is?
maybe,
You call them disciples. It's fine.
yeah. I like because I feel like they're really powerful. They have this. I mean, they're clerics basically, right? For those of us who play in D&D,
Yeah.
or maybe like paladins. But they have a lot of power because of their god, whoever their god is, depending on their power level and like their acceptance of them, their relationship with them, they can have a lot of power. Um, Ulysses keeps the identity of his god secret, possibly to protect himself. Ulysses' god is an unknown god of fire who is the peer of Prometheus, according to the Pact Wiki.
Hmm.
This is pretty good. I forgot Ulysses' name, y'all. So I typed pale, wild bow, god boy. And the third thing that came up was Ulysses. Like the first thing was just literally like pat or pale, and I don't remember the second thing was, but the third thing was Ulysses, and I was like, haha, this is great. Okay. Um
That's funny.
but yeah, Ulysses is like super gorgeous and beautiful, super put together. He has this big sword. He seems to have this like really strong devotion to his god, and it's just all like great and honorable and shit, right? And then there's Jeremy, who I think also like has a strong devotion to his god, but is like a complete fucking mess. I mean, he's very powerful. He has a whole like coterie of beings around him all the time. Whereas Ulysses is kind of like a hero or champion, like alone, sort of. Jeremy has a group of worshippers for Dionysus, but he, I don't know, he feels more sad, more isolated. Um, this kind of practitioner also feels like very strong but very vulnerable.
Hmm.
If their god, something happens to them, decreases in power, um their relationship is severed, whatever, it can be disastrous probably. The fairy really dismissed Dionysus as like a shitty god that no one worships anymore or whatever. And I feel like the more that becomes true, the less power Jeremy or someone would have. He also doesn't have a lot of choices over himself. He's, like, if he was like, "Hey, let my wife have a girl," um, Dionysus doesn't care, right?
Yeah.
Um, and while the first time at least I interpreted it as Jeremy asked for a boy, the second time I wasn't
Mm,
sure if that was what had happened.
mhm.
Um, it seems like while Jeremy is very powerful, he's also very reliant on Dionysus, and Ulysses possibly is as well. Um, but then with Ulysses, it's not like, oh, he's literally Prometheus's disciple or whatever. It's like someone else. Like, this is again Wildbow taking a slight step off of the mainstream Greek pantheon path, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, but I think this is a super interesting type of practitioner, with a lot of like upsides and a lot of downsides. Um, and I can't imagine just being like, yep, like, I mean, this is funny to say as a Catholic, like, but being like, yep, that one, I'm committing my whole like life to that being. Because I think like, yeah, like Jesus, I could do that. I think, but being like, oh, the drunk guy, or like, oh yes, the ocean man, and this is, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in this universe, like the other verse, like and the other like yeah, lowercase g gods
Hmm.
exist. It's kind of like, oh, I got to pick one, you know.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit different, but
It just that to me feels like a like weirdly big commitment.
yeah, maybe if you're surrounded by a bunch of alcohol, it helps.
It that also feels like a very like male in their early 20s decision.
Yeah,
Like, I wonder if Jeremy was ever like, "Oh, fuck."
yeah. Well, I mean, we may get to see more of him if it's not their little boy child. All right, I'm gonna stop. But
Or Harold.
or Harold, yes. I don't even remember if that was what he changed his name to, but I think it was something like that.
It was something like
Close enough.
that.
I feel like it was Harold, but all right. Now we get Malia's bold and specific prediction, which you haven't written anything down, so this is gonna be exciting. Or you're gonna bullshit something on the spot. So as long as it's bold and specific and a prediction, then we'll be fine.
Well, so for like a second and a half, I was kind of like, "Oh, I bet that the thing that's up with the Duchamps and the thing that's up with the Thorburns are like the same thing and they're really connected." But then it was
Hmm.
like, no, like Grandma Rose could have boys, whereas like it seems like the Duchamps like cannot ever bear boys.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems a little shot. Um I mean, I think that there's something up with both of those things, and I think that we'll learn what it is, but I kind of don't think that they're the same thing
Hmm.
necessarily,
Okay.
which is not very bold of a prediction. Um, I don't know. Do you have like a prompt?
Um. Let's let. Okay. Which Because I know Blake hasn't done any of the main rituals yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he's gonna do any in Toronto?
Well, okay. So I also try not to read too many things into things, but on the last episode of Pale Reflections, I think Elliot said like, we don't know what a domain ritual looks like and I really want to see one. And I was like, fuck, are you doing that thing where in the very first episode you were like, these like magicians don't know what they're called? Like, are you just like that good? Or have you really never seen a fucking domain ritual? Because I'm gonna lose it if there's no domain rituals in this fucking book. Um
I don't know, they're pretty good, but
I know, I feel like feel like he's gonna do the familiar one first, except I don't, because I think it's gonna be Rose, and I think for some reason we're just not talking about that, which makes me feel like maybe he'll do the implement one first. He shouldn't be doing any major rituals in Toronto because he's not anywhere safe. Um, I
Unless
think
he
he
makes a domain.
God damn it. That would be fascinating if he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a domain in Toronto, lol, bye." He doesn't want to make a domain in Toronto because, like, everything would come for him. Like, Toronto's a big, scary place, and there's probably lots of magic shit there. And I feel like you don't want to be like, hello, everything in this immediate area that is Toronto. Come fucking fight me. Um, so I'm gonna say no, he won't do one
Okay.
in the next
In
the
this next
Toronto.
arc. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'd say that's bold and specific enough.
Cool.
Say that he's not doing anything. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to go over this week's, or I guess last week's discussion question. It's just me reading over it today. Leah's done the last one or two, so it's only fair. Our question for last week's episode was, if you were to compare yourself to a piece of clothing, what would it be and why? So we have first up, Tiza Rat. They were saying they view their life like a pair of candy underwear, which is hilarious to me. They say that similar to candy underwear, their life is novel, kind of fun, not really useful, and full of sugar. So I love that. So talking about themselves, they view themselves to be more like a worn out jumper, specifically with one sleeve starting to unravel. Also, specifically, someone's trying to repair and reknit it at the same time. Sometimes the unraveling is faster, sometimes the knitter's faster, but it's warm, and depending on the ravel versus the knitter, can be reasonably practical. So I like that answer. Thank you very much. Next is Beleg Tal. They say toque, mainly to get me to say toque again. So thanks for the honesty there. But they also were saying they like Canadian things and they're cozy. Toques, I guess Canadians can be cozy too. I don't know. I haven't cuddled a Canadian before, but I'll take your word for that. Beleg Tal. Next up, we've got Bavarian Barbarian. They say a set of suspenders. They say that they're slender, very unstylish, but undeniably useful, and can be augmented with many useful features. And this is just for me, but you can customize them. You could put little buttons or little random things on them, definitely adds to the unstylishness, I guess, depending on what kind of decor you decide to put on there. But, rock those suspenders. Last but not least, we have Fleet Feathers, and he says a scarf. Basically say that scarf's not always necessary, sometimes can be over the top, can add a splash of pattern or color, but in certain environments, very appreciated and comforting. Scarf can also pull an outfit together. And last but definitely not least, a scarf blows dramatically in the wind. And that is definitely true. So thank you guys for your answers. That was a lot of fun. And that is it.
I thought immediately just now of a discussion question we could ask, like, which god would you pick?
Okay, that's a pretty good one. All right, let's do that. Good segue into that, by the way. I like it. But which god would you pick as your god to, like, base all your practice shit off of?
Yeah. I think you can, like, either pick, someone like Dionysus, who we kind of know what they are, or maybe kind of say, like, I would like a god with these kind of characteristics or attributes, like what you think you'd get, like why who would you pick, why would you pick them, and like what kinds of things do you think you would get from that relationship, and what kinds of things do you think you'd have to give up, like you get to be drunk, well, not actually drunk, you get to be intoxicated all the time, but On the other hand, you have to be intoxicated all the time. Like, what is the, you know?
Yeah, true.
You get a big fucking sword, but your god's almost dead, or whatever's up with Ulysses.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to put all that, but like, if you do, it'd be cool.
Y'all can do what you want.
Do what you want. It's just a prompt. Just do what you want. Whatever feels right in your soul.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a rating and review. To help support our podcast, go to patreon.com/doofmedia. If you'd like to support Wildbow as he continues to write fantastic stories, go to patreon.com/wildbow.
You can follow the pod on Twitter at Pale Comparison, or send us an email at paleincomparisonpod@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for our Reddit thread in r/parahumans, where you can answer our discussion question and share your thoughts on this episode. In addition, if you'd like to see all of my predictions laid out, check out our episode description for a link to a prediction tracker. And don't forget, Pale Conflections! Submissions for the fan art contest are due July 30th, and if you become one of our patrons, you can vote and pick the winner.
That's right. Get your art on.
Yes.
Does that sound weird? Probably.
I love it.
All right, this week's fun fact. 'Cause I know you're dying to know what breaching a hole in a wall has to do with this. So it's not about breaching a hole in a wall, but just breaching a hole in general, if that sentence makes sense. So I'm sure most people are familiar with the game Cards Against Humanity. So in 2016, for Black Friday, Cards Against Humanity raised specifically $100,573 to dig a hole as deep as possible and fill it back up again. There was no purpose for doing this. The creators did not state any reason for the hole or any planned use of the money besides this. They explicitly ruled out charity in a FAQ. Because I think what one reader just the question was, why aren't you giving this money to charity instead? They responded by saying, why aren't you giving all this money to charity? It's your money.
Which is a really good point.
That is a good point. I mean, they tell you straight up what they're doing with it, and you're choosing to donate to them anyway. So this was located in Oregon, Illinois, which is confusing, but there's a place called Oregon, Illinois. And I think they spent a few days. They live streamed the dig. The construction company said it was the weirdest request that they'd gotten, but they were happy to do it for money. So, if you're interested as well, I'm not going to read through all of them because there's a lot, but there's quite a few other Black Friday promotions that Cards Against Humanity has done. Including an anti-sale where the game's cost was raised $5, and yet they still actually had a minor spike in sales during that period. So that just shows
how strange humans are.
Yeah, people are weird as fuck, man. But anyway, that's our fact and that's our episode. So have a good week, everyone.
Yep. Quick update. His name was Herman, which isn't actually that easy to guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, he should have done like
Bob.
Honestly, yeah, Bob. I mean, Herman's a lot easier than Rumpelstiltskin if you've never heard Rumpelstiltskin. But
do you know anyone named Herman? No.
No, I don't. Well, yeah, it's rough luck, man.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Bye, everyone. I just saw the Slacker messages Matt just put on, and then, or have you checked Slacker in a little bit? It's like an hour ago. They were just talking about how like a Star Wars anime thing. then Matt's basically like, "Anime might be the best medium for the thing Star Wars has turned into." And I just want them to go buck wild and gradually introduce all the powers from Naruto. And Scott's just like, "I hate you."